Hi, I'm Chloe. Thank you for visiting our video. Find out why our team can provide you the best services for your needs. Hundreds of clients can't be wrong. Check out the following video.
Real estate with realtor Kashif Sohail. Welcome to Washington America Show with international multimedia journalist, multidimensional, multifaceted artist and director of Human Rights Justice Council USA, Dr. Kashif Sohail.
Standard & Poor's Index, S&P 500, is now considered as the true gauge of the U.S. stock market. The S&P 500 covers most areas of the U.S. economy. The S&P 500 is subject to change. The investors always have their eye on its variations and irregular rising and falling in number. When the index rises above the 1,000 mark, this is a sign of recovery as consumers reinvest in top stocks.
The soaring stock market had encouraged and facilitated increases in business investment up to its early 2000 peak, but the popping of the dot-com bubble reversed this process. For most of the following decade, business investment was a drag on economic growth. This was not helped by the 2008 financial crisis and subsequent recession. However, the stock market began to rebound in 2009, and has since been hitting new milestones. In August 2014, the S&P 500 passed the 2,000 mark.
The Consumer Price Index, CPI, reflects the efficacy of government policy and is divided into two categories, the CPI-U for urban consumers, and the CPI-W for hourly wage earners and clerical workers. Together, these indicators account for typical purchases by the majority of the U.S. population.
The CPI is a good indicator of inflation because it represents the price of goods and services that are commonly used, everything from rent to the cost of food. The CPI is updated monthly and is released around the 15th of the following month. Interpreting this index is fairly simple.
A rising rate means inflation, but economists usually consider an annual 1% or 2% change acceptable. Anything higher means there has been significant inflation and as a result, consumers' purchasing power decreases. The Federal Reserve will also raise short-term interest rates to discourage market activity. When analyzing the CPI, the core rate may provide a more accurate assessment of inflation because it excludes volatile costs like energy.
The U.S. economy is influenced by a variety of factors, and that its health is measured by a variety of indicators. Inflation exists where there is an increase in the price of goods and services, or a decrease in the purchasing power of the dollar.
Most commonly, inflation is caused where there is too much money in circulation and too few goods. For example, if everyone had 5 times as much money, but the amount of goods and services produced remained the same, prices would naturally rise by a factor of 5. The simplistic solution to inflation is to avoid printing too much money.
In most countries, the money supply is controlled by a central bank. In the United States, Japan, Switzerland, and Europe, the central banks are independent of government control, and the government cannot force the banks to create more money to pay for its spending.
In many Latin American and other developing countries, the government controls the central bank and can force it to print new money to support government spending. As a result, these countries have had inflation rates of 100 to over 1,000% a year.
A recession consists of a prolonged period of time when the economy slows or shrinks. A number of trends signal such a slowdown, including consumers purchasing fewer goods, factories decreasing production, rising unemployment, decreases in personal income, a poorly performing stock market.
Traditionally, this slowdown must continue for at least 6 countries' GNP in 2 successive quarters. A prolonged period of contraction is known as a recession. If the recession lasts long enough and is particularly severe, it is known as a depression. However, the term depression is politically charged. To avoid panic, most officials use the more neutral term recession. Some experts believe that recessions are simply crises of trust in business confidence and consumer spending.
Recessions are usually triggered by economic shocks. The greatest, worldwide recession that humanity has ever experienced was the Great Depression, late 1920s and 1930s. Another notable recession was the oil crisis in the 1970s. In both cases, the reliability of prior pricing decisions and leadership quality was in question, and money tended to seek safe havens, like real estate, and avoid speculative investments exposed to the crisis. However, real estate isn't an automatic safe haven for investment. The most recent recession, known as the Great Recession, was triggered by such assumptions.
The expansion of the 1990s was fundamentally different from other post-World War II business cycle upturns. During the first half of the 1990s, unusually favorable developments fueled optimism in the stock market. As the decade intensified, it inflated a stock market bubble, known as the dot-com bubble.
As stocks soared, entrepreneurs and firm managers became more optimistic about the profitability of new business investment. The rising stock market also facilitated the financing of business investment. Consequently, business investment climbed.
After the stock market bubble burst in the first quarter of 2000, it became apparent that many firms, especially in the information technology and telecommunications industries, had invested in too many capital assets and the wrong types of capital assets. The unusual excesses of this economic expansion resulted in an economic slowdown and recession that were just as atypical.
Most post-war recessions were driven by consumers sharply reducing consumption spending, especially on housing and durable goods. However, consumption spending had actually increased. Instead, the recent early 2000s slowdown and recession were driven by plunging business investment.
In this respect, this slowdown and recession resemble the investment-driven recessions of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, rather than the consumption-driven recessions of the post-war era. Weakness in business investment and bad business investments made during the stock market bubble took years to liquidate.
In 9 of the 10 quarters after the stock market bubble, real business investment actually declined. However, tax legislation can promote business investment by increasing the after-tax returns from investing in capital assets and alleviating financing constraints among small and medium-sized firms. Economic issues facing the world economy, as well as regions and countries, include prospects for growth, inflation, energy and the environment, inequality, labor issues, emerging markets, and the impact of new technologies. Entrepreneurship and business creation is fundamental to a healthy economy. Companies less than 5 years old create an average of 1.5 million new jobs for Americans each year. Immigrants in particular play a very important role in creating jobs as they are more likely to start a new business than the rest of the population.
So, since you've learned more about us, click the link in the description to see how you can contact us.
Please share this video, subscribe to our channel.
Are you looking to buy or sell a home anytime soon? If so, you've come to the right place. We'd like to give you the opportunity to work with one of the top local real estate agents and get the best deal when buying or selling a home. The fact is, experienced agents can often get you a 2 to 10% better deal on the purchase or sale of a property, mostly due to their experience in the local marketplace and their ability to negotiate the best deal. So contact our top agent now and start the process of buying or selling your home.